Right. Welcome back to the House Environment Committee. We have draft 5.1 that we're gonna look at with our legislative council.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. Sorry, I'm trying to get the draft. 5.1.
The first change, comma. 4 line 7.
I'm paying attention. Yeah, the changes are highlighted in yellow. So yes, the first one is on page 4 with the comma. Okay, the next change is on page 7, section 9, the public engagement plan. And so this is the language that Representative Chapin read for you. Still January 15, 2027, the State Natural Resources Conservation Council shall contract with the Vermont Council on Rural Development and the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts to develop a report outlining recommendations for a public engagement plan in consultation with the Land Use Review Board and the Land Access and Opportunity Board. On to page 8. The contractor shall ensure the engagement planning process would maintain neutrality on policy and political issues, utilize neutral facilitation for statewide democratic public engagement, and be designed to inclusively and meaningfully engage a full range of stakeholders, including Vermont residents and landowners and historically marginalized communities.
Is there a reason we left out the language around alignment with Act 154?
I took it out because they're not this entity won't be building it. They're not subject to the.
Sure.
But yeah.
So the Vermont Council on Rural Development is
up just a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
the Vermont Council on Rural Development is not related in any way to Act 154, but the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts is a named member of the Environmental Justice.
Interagency.
No, not the Interagency Council, the Advisory Council.
Advisory Council.
They're still not subject to being in compliance with the.
No.
Well,
No, but I feel like there's similar processes that are ongoing to establish like general principles for community engagement with environmental justice focused populations. And the fact that we're contracting out away from the state or another covered entity like the LURB means that we're ignoring the work that we've done to try to establish processes that achieve environmental justice goals
So
for the state.
the language you're talking about is on what page of version 4.2?
page. At the bottom of page 7.
Okay.
This plan shall be in compliance and coordinated with the requirements of chapter 72.
So we could just say coordinated with.
I really have no idea what that means, nor whether the state, like, I guess we might want to hear from them whether they.
They already have community engagement principles.
Right. So maybe we could say that, like, in alignment with community engagement principles.
Sure. Those have already been developed.
That feels more specific and relevant. Opposed to what you're saying, I just don't think it's very.
No, I get it.
Is that instead of some language that's already here or?
No.
It's in addition.
It's a sentence I left out because I didn't think it was relevant anymore. But it would, so in a, what did I just say? In alignment with.
Specific language that we want.
I said in alignment with community engagement principles, but Kate's checking exactly what that existing.
Yeah, is it about me? It's like the meaningful participation.
Yeah, well, there's, the community engagement principles was one of the first deliverables
Okay.
in Act 154. And those have already been developed.
Maybe on line 3, add it as another, the contractor shall ensure.
Mhm.
Alignment.
with the engagement principle.
Developed pursuant to chapter 72, 3 PSA chapter 2.
Just the key.
Okay. So implementation of state policy, section 6004C. Community engagement plan shall align with the core principles developed by the interagency. 2006 B.
Maybe we'll move on and let you read this up.
Sure.
Okay.
So still on page 8, further down, subsection B about what the plan would include hasn't changed. But subsection C and D, on or before January 15th, the council shall submit the report. And then, the appropriation in fiscal year 2027, $30,000 from the general fund to the State Natural Resources Conservation Council for the public engagement plan design described in this section. Next, in section 10 on page 9, the oversight committee.
And I do have that reference. It's section 6006 C B. C2B. There's a set of core principles to guide and coordinate the development of community engagement plans. Yeah. C2B, yeah.
Clarify.
You may.
So is this aligned with Paul Costello with the process? Does this have anything?
No, it's state law.
I know, but I'm just asking about the process.
This generally includes
Yeah.
Vermont Council on Rural Development.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
On page 9 in section 10, the oversight committee, the committee may meet 6 times per year. From 8 in the last draft. And then on page 10, in the duty section, the only change is that regularly has been struck from both sentences. So the committee shall meet with the land use review board and shall also meet with the Agency of Natural Resources. Do you want to skip section 11 for the moment and go to the other changes, or do you want to start?
I guess so, if you have a reason.
Well, there's other things to discuss, but we can start here. Okay. So at the bottom of page 10, start section 11. This has been titled the Land Use Review Board Report. It is based on the language from the prior tier 2 report. What you were just discussing, maybe as the working lands report. So now what it says is, on or before November 15th, 2027, the Land Use Review Board shall deliver a report that shall review, onto page 11.
I'm sorry, can we just go back to I'm sorry, maybe I messed up the dates. What was the date we originally had in there? January
January
2020.
15th, 2027. But I'm back to believing that we shouldn't have this report back to us before 2028,
I know, but when you had the 2028 date in there, what was it?
January 15th.
Of 2028.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I moved it, because January of 28 was similar to November 27, but it gives the legislature more time with it.
To read it.
Yeah. That's okay, Sarah you're nodding. Does that make sense to you? Also, it's holidays, you're not gonna be working anymore on the holidays.
For the record, Sarah had land use review board, November is acceptable and we can go through all this, but November was.
I mean, actually, it was February 15th, sorry. But.
It's ruining everyone's Valentine's Day.
We're gonna keep this section in here, though. We gotta align it so that the outputs, so the public engagement are inputs into this.
Let's
Because I
keep-
think that makes
Let's
sense.
keep walking through it.
So the land use review board shall deliver a report that shall review, and so on to page 11, the effectiveness of mitigation of impacts on primary agricultural soils and making recommendations for how to improve protections for this natural resource. The effectiveness of jurisdictional triggers for development of retail and service businesses outside village centers, and criterion 9L in addressing sprawl and strip development and how to improve the effectiveness of criterion 9L. And whether and how Act 250 jurisdiction over commercial activities on farm should be revised, including accessory on-farm businesses. And so just to remind you, these three things are what are part of what is currently the tier 2 report. It gets rid of some of the other things. But this is the language from the tier 2 report currently.
From Act 181.
From Act 181, yes.
So oh, go ahead. Did you have?
There's added that the board shall engage relevant stakeholders as part of the development of this report, and then that it will go to the House and Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources Committees.
Time, maybe.
I think if we don't make these boards in line so that the public input stuff doesn't get into this, we run into the same problem that got us 325.
I disagree, because Act 181 gave very put prescriptive policy into law. And this would be a report that would come out. And this is why I tried to put some link between the community engagement process and this report, because it does seem to me like there's the potential for a conversation to happen. So they put out this report in November, and that gives the community engagement process an opportunity to bring some of these ideas to folks during that community engagement process and say like, well, what about this? What do you think about this? So in some ways, it seems like it would be helpful for this report to come out in the process of the community engagement, during the community engagement process, so that folks have an opportunity to engage with ideas that are put out by the Land Use Review Board in conversation, in a more conversational way.
Representative.
So we heard really specifically from Paul Costello that that is not the way to do good public engagement, and that we're both hearing from Vermonters that they want their voices to be the thing that then gets listened to. And we're hearing from Paul Costello that the public engagement process doesn't put a preconceived idea on the table to then get input, because that can trigger a lot of feelings of like, well, you've already decided which direction you're going. When I think about the content of this report, I was open to this report getting added back in here if it was really like information from the Land Use Review Board about their work and their observation of their data and their processes. Not meant to be like, here's what the legislature should do, but more like, here's information from the legislature, from our institution and our 2 or 3 years worth of overseeing this work. I would like to keep them really separate. I don't want them to be overlapping. If they're overlapping, I think we need to wait for the public process.
I too see them as separate, and they kind of data driven for the legislature, to inform the legislature on topics that are continually being discussed in the building. Representative Logan.
I guess if I, I'll make a recommendation based on what Representative Chapin just said. For example, at the top of page 11A, the effectiveness of mitigation of impacts on primary agricultural soils, period. Not and making recommendations. So I think what folks are responding to is the fact that this report has the Land Use Review Board making recommendations for how to improve protections for this natural resource, when that is supposed to be the purpose of the community engagement process. And if we want that, the making recommendations part in this report from the Land Use Review Board, then it should be after the community engagement process has completed. Does that capture what everybody's been saying?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
So just to clarify, the community engagement will come before the report.
That's what I just proposed.
Yes.
I would propose we narrow this and make it not about recommendations. It really should be data, like something the LURB can do without input from the public, that is input from the LURB to the legislature, and separately, we're getting public input to the legislature.
Right.
And thus, yeah, I'm not sure that, I guess
So,
I've
and
just been a little
making.
concerned that like the Land Use Review Board, we either need to make it more narrow, that A, or we just need to say like, how is mitigation working?
Well, that's what it would do if we took and making.
Exactly.
Out.
Yes, so I would go that route and not, and have it concurrent with the public engagement process.
Concurrent or?
Yes.
But separate.
Because they're separate.
And we're not starting a public engagement
No, we're not.
process right now,
That's
so
what I
we
was
have
just thinking.
no idea how long that will take. That
Yeah.
could be 2 or 3 years easily.
Yeah.
You've only covered A.
I mean, but similar. And how to, and it, and B.
I mean, I guess I don't understand, I don't know enough about what the LURB does, but to me, B is very narrow about improving the effectiveness of a particular criterion. To what end, I'm still trying to figure out, but I think at least in B, it's clear it's about addressing sprawl and I presume, reducing sprawl and strip development.
Yeah, it's already enacted.
That's like about Act 250 and how it's working, and it has this clear, like, to what end. A doesn't really have a to what end. Are we trying to preserve all agricultural soils?
No, the
This mitigation.
purpose of A is a review of the effectiveness of Act 250 of mitigation of impacts on primary agricultural soils.
It's basically when people are building on primary ag soils and given a permit to do that, and then they have to pay for mitigation, how well that money is going to actually conserving probably.
How effective is
Permanent.
it
Yeah,
at mitigating impacts?
yeah. I think we can leave that one at that. B, I think it works. I think we can expect to get a how to improve the effectiveness of a particular criterion in the Act 250 process.
And then how about C?
C, I think it's good the way it is. They're far along in that process. I'm ready to,
I wouldn't say they're far along.
They've started.
they started, they have thoughts.
Because they actually did a accessory farm business report 2 years ago too.
Nor.
We keep hearing from farmers that they want to have input on, and if we're gonna just do C without talking to the farmers, it seems, that before we do this whole exercise with Vermonters, and just seems way out of order and very disheartening to people who feel like, okay, finally the legislature's listened to us, and then we gotta do this and cut them right off at the knees.
Well, I would say that we just took testimony, I mean, the LURB has asked for a bill to be paused addressing accessory on-farm business in anticipation of looking at it more deeply. So there's a demand out there for addressing this. Keeps coming back to me.
Yeah, it's like the constant bills on the wall about loosening
Yeah.
that.
Representative Sacramento.
I'm wondering whether that on line 9, the should maybe ought to be a could to give options rather than saying sort of take some of that value out of it and sort of more about where we ought to be going, but what are our options?
Representative Levy.
I'd just like to note that the community engagement, the public engagement plan does not include agricultural on-farm businesses. Does not include on-farm businesses anywhere. It's not asking people what they think about them.
But
It's-
don't,
Representative Bell.
don't you think people will bring that up in the community engagement process? If
That's
a
not the
concern?
purpose, though. The purpose of the public engagement plan would be to gather statewide input from Vermonters on the risks of losing working lands, both agricultural and forest lands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and tools for doing that. It doesn't ask farmers to talk about what they think about agricultural, like on-farm businesses.
I guess they would. I mean, don't they? I think they would. I mean, we don't have to spell it out for them. I'm sure during that discussion, they would bring that up.
I think the point is that we've framed the public engagement process around natural resources, ag soils, as opposed to commercial farm activities.
Yeah.
Whereas this Act 250 is related to commercial development. Agricultural businesses are generally excluded, but accessory on-farm businesses is this in-between somewhat gray area that we've been struggling with legislatively around Act 250 jurisdiction for years, and we've gone not back and forth, but we've made changes over recent years. And so I think we're trying to get feedback on whether those changes and how it's working right now, just information on how, like, what kinds of commercial activities are ending up under Act 250 jurisdiction currently. And do we want to, like, frankly, I think the C leads us towards not should be revised, but maybe reduced. Like we're considering it. There's been a bill on the wall to reduce jurisdiction. So as opposed to the public engagement process, which started from a place of increasing jurisdiction related to natural resources that need better protection, this C is about reducing jurisdiction for specific kinds of commercial activities.
Well, I think it's actually revised and it's clarifying.
Right, might not be.
It's clarifying because, and whether it should be revised. Yeah, I don't think it's
Not just about reducing necessarily.
Representative Levy.
Yeah, and I just, again, go back to the purpose of the public engagement plan was in response to our efforts to protect forest blocks through implementing the road rule and a number of other resources by establishing tier 3, not about asking everybody what they think about Act 250. That's a different process. And I mean, I don't support that process. I support this process of saying like, hey, we had these policy goals. We tried to articulate them this way. This really upset you. We're going to go back to the drawing board and surface ideas from Vermonters about how to do these things on their properties, how to protect these critical natural resources on their own property, not take up Act 250 as a whole.
I'm just worried about the perception right now. I think people are looking at us as a top-down, and then you comment, we're giving you something, and then you comment, as opposed to just listening to their concerns. I mean, certainly with some, guardrails and stuff like that, or parameters, but I'm just concerned about the perception more than the reality.
I will say, I mean, farmers want us to do something about accessory on-farm business policy in Act 250 right now.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. And yeah, there's been a bill every year. This doesn't relate to critical natural resources areas. This relates to farmland.
Well, if that's the one thing we know, why don't we just focus this whole thing on that one thing that we know? And focus this section around getting data about Act 250 jurisdiction over commercial activities on farms and on accessory on-farm businesses, and engaging the farming community in doing exactly that. Why don't we just narrow this whole thing down to that, if that's what's the most important thing? And then, because that's what we've heard from the LURB, they've already started working on that part of it. They haven't even started on the rest of it. So let's just focus this on that, get that done like by this coming January. And focus, yeah, be really intentional about it. And then this other longer term stuff, well, let's see how that went, and then we'll kick off the next round.
I'd like ag soils in that too, because I'm hearing a lot about ag soils.
I have Logan.
The reason that these things are here and were in Act 181 in the first place is because they were topics that people wanted to talk about last session,
Interesting.
and we didn't do it. And the report was already due, and we don't have that report for good reasons. Like, I'm not complaining about that, but we wanted information on these things. I think what people are responding negatively to is in making recommendations for how to improve protections for this natural resource. But we want information about these things. They were topic of a lot of discussion in the last legislative session. And we didn't redo all of that conversation this session because there was this report coming back to us. And now we're talking about not doing the report that we already enacted in law. I don't have a problem. I don't have an issue with taking out and making recommendations if that's going to be a topic of discussion in the public engagement process. But, I just went back and reviewed the language, and primary ag soils aren't in the community engagement process either, because again, it is not a public engagement process about Act 250. It's about.
We specifically added the ag soils into.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
No, you're right.
But mitigation is a very specific activity that happens when projects are allowed to be permitted on ag soils that we lose permanently in development.
Yeah.
So mitigation is not preserving.
Yeah.
Mitigation is actually losing them.
Yeah.
What are we doing about that?
Yeah.
And so I think that asking for data, let's just focus on getting data on what's happening with those mitigation funds. How many acres are we preserving for all the ones that we've been permitting development?
Maybe it needs to be more specific, because right now I'm sitting here going, what does the effectiveness
Right, yeah.
of mitigation mean? Because I guess the question is,
Yeah, that's
how
a
do you measure,
qualitative.
how do you measure what didn't happen?
Yeah, so shall review the mitigation of impacts on primary agricultural soils.
Mitigation activities for primary agriculture.
Permitted.
I hadn't even understood that term mitigation to mean what you're talking about right now.
Oh, yeah,
Until
yeah.
this second.
Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
mitigation generally results actually in contribution to the VHCB fund that protects the prime ag.
That's what you mean by it.
So but we mean to say permitted mitigation.
Yeah. Something like that.
Sure.
So not the effectiveness of, but just like a review of permitted mitigation activities
Mitigation activities.
on primary agricultural soils. Like a look back.
It's not even effectiveness, it's just the effect.
Yeah, the effect of permitted mitigation
It's like-
activities on primary
Do
agricultural.
we already
soils.
know? I think this is data that's already kept. It's like a report. This is a report on how much mitigation, yeah, we've had them in.
Yes.
So why are we even asking for this then? No.
And this is
Because
the
we wanted
challenge.
recommendations.
How
Now
to
this group wants
improve.
to strike the recommendations. I mean, I think I'm still okay with recommendations.
Coming back.
Okay, so here's the deal also. We can keep walking through this. We're not gonna vote tonight, so let's just get through it, think about it. Did you just raise your hand?
No, yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe the title could be land use review of current data or something. Just to make it more specific, because of, I think people might get confused with the land use review board report. Feel like that's, again.
Yeah, could use
Okay,
it. but-
let's still,
Okay.
that's fine.
It is quite a high level name. So the next change is not until page 26. And this is one of my recommendations. So, there aren't any substantive changes to section 20, except that I realized that you all were asking for this Community Investment Board report to be an annual report, not a one-time report. And so I have added it to the chapter on the Community Investment Board. And then, and there's an and in there. And then finally, the last change is the addition of section 21. And this is the municipal appeals discretionary review of housing report. So, this report is based on what the Senate sent you, but it has been rewritten based on the earlier conversation. And so it now reads, on or before January 15, 2027, the Department of Housing and Community Development, after consultation with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, Let's Build Homes, the Vermont Natural Resources Council, the Vermont Planners Association, the Land Access and Opportunity Board, the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, the Vermont Bar Association, and the Secretary of Natural Resources or their designee, shall report on the following: mechanisms for limiting appeals of municipal permits while allowing municipalities to address legitimate concerns with projects, including the most commonly raised issues on appeal, an evaluation of statutory or procedural tools to limit duplicative or frivolous appeals, and recommend legislative action needed, if any. The report shall also include impacts of discretionary review on residential development. The department shall consider the following, onto page 28. Whether this, it should be rewritten slightly because there's only one bullet point, but whether the state should assist municipalities seeking to develop clear and objective standards, including model codes, the potential value of the federal right to build zone legislation, and steps the state can take to maximize that value, and incentives and planning assistance the state can offer municipalities seeking to limit discretionary review, and a status update on the 802 Homes pilot program. The report shall be submitted to the House Committee on Environment and Housing in general, and the Senate Committees on Economic Development and Natural Resources and Energy.
To develop clear and objective standards. I think it should just say objective standards. Implying the others aren't clear. Sounds like you're gonna restructure it to.
Slightly, yes. And then, so the first part of the sentence, so in that subdivision A on top of page 28, so it's whether the state should assist municipalities seeking to develop objective standards. And then the last part on line 4 is incentives and planning assistance the state can offer municipalities seeking to limit discretionary review. Okay.
Public outreach process.
There isn't a required,
Interesting.
other than the stakeholder group at the beginning, there's stakeholders.
One of the things that I considered adding into this was, I actually think like the process should be in engaging with the municipalities about their,
Yeah.
um, about the 802 homes pilot program.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, the other piece, municipalities can do whatever they want, with the standards. The 802 homes pilot project is,
Presumably they're doing outreach for that.
I would assume,
I mean, but
yeah.
the two homes thing almost doesn't fit. But I guess it's just data.
It's related because it's developing.
I'm just looking at the title of this report.
It was tacked on at the end. In the Senate.
It's related because it's creating
It's somewhat related
design standards.
related to the idea of model code.
Yeah, it's related to the
Model code. I'm not against it being in
Yeah,
there. It just.
but I
it's a
agree.
little Out of. Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, we will take this wrapped up again in the morning. I think you're gonna clean it up a little bit, so I don't know if it'll get a new number or not, but you and the editors can decide what we see next, but we'll see in the next draft tomorrow morning. All right, with that, we're